Thank you. Thank you. We have a big announcement for you today. We are redefining creativity by removing the creator, introducing Replace You, an entire creative department, all unburdened by the constraints of sleep, ego, or inconvenient opinions. Fueled by trillions of scraped data points, yours included probably. Replace You doesn't just mimic your style, it predicts it. Some say that's theft. We say that's innovation. Sure, some creatives feel disposable. Others say they've lost their purpose. But let's be honest, creativity isn't about purpose. It's about profits. Why nurture and develop talent when you can simulate it? Replace You doesn't just get the job done. It outpaces, outprices, and outlasts the humans who used to do it. In the race to the bottom, we intend to win.
Welcome to Fuse, the AI Creative Podcast, where we explore the intersection of AI and creativity with your hosts, Rob and Jason.
All right. Hello, friends. This is Rob, one of the hosts of Fuse, the AI Creative Podcast, here with you with my friend Jason and our producer Liz behind the scenes. We've got an exciting episode for you on the idea of, is AI going to take my job? The fact is that generative AI is changing the world of creativity, but is it an opportunity or is it a threat? In other words, is AI going to replace my job as a creative, or are there ways that I can leverage the developments to get ahead in my career and remain relevant? Jason, that's what we're going to explore today. What are some ways that you're remaining relevant in the world of AI and creativity?
That is a great question. Well, last night I was editing one of our episodes and preparing it for YouTube when I got this really exciting email that VO2, Google's generative video model, had been released. And I got a little off track and didn't finish editing the episode because now you can do image to video. And I'll tell you, every one of the things I tried was pretty well usable. I couldn't believe how good everything was. And so that led me to create a little viral video that I showed on TikTok. Just checked in right before we started recording, nearing 450,000 views, which is the best video I've ever done. And it was taking a photo and bringing it to life. So pretty cool stuff.
Well, don't let all that fame go to your head, Jason. Let's keep it humble, keep it low here on our
Right.
podcast. Also, producer
Yes.
Liz is going to wag her finger at you for getting off track and not finishing our episode. But I think that exploring
Sorry, Liz.
exploring a fun new tool like VO2, I've been using their text to video, and I'm eager to try out that image to video as well. We'll have to go back and totally re-record
Now-
that filmmaking episode again.
Yes, absolutely. I know yesterday you showed me a little hint of something. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but you've been working on kind of a fun project too. You want to talk about that?
I am a big fan of that. Creativity is beyond just the visual space and can go into the beauty of code as well. And so I'm a nerd. I like to build things. And I remember when I got my first computer back in middle school, and my mom brought home this janky old X486 compact PC that could barely run Windows 3.1, but it came with this install disk of this text-based adventure game called Zork. And you just basically tell it what you want to do. And it's it was an early chatbot, but it wasn't smart. And you play the game and you go north, open the mailbox, get the leaflet. And so I wanted to recreate that magic. And so I created Adventure GPT, which is a fun little nod to the old Infocom games. Basically, it can generate those things dynamically for you with a full map and inventory system. It was fun. It was a few hours spent in Claude 3.7, which is a beast for writing code. Some other fun stuff that has happened this week too. As we're recording this, as of yesterday, OpenAI just dropped a bunch of agentic stuff. Agents are the next wave of what's coming with AI, and basically opened up to where you can create multiple agents that can pass off responsibilities to one another. And then also, if you were paying attention when they released Operator a month ago, it was only on pro accounts, and it's basically this thing that could operate your computer for you. It was really bad because it's a research preview, but they just opened that up so that anybody can build on that technology, and it can control your computer to do stuff, which could be terrifying if you aren't careful. So I'm excited about all the fun technology that's coming out.
Very
Where are
cool.
we going with this episode?
So, Rob, today we're going to talk about whether or not AI is coming for us. And I get this question a lot. I actually wrote about this in the book, really the history of technology and disruption. And there are two different ways to think about this. One is that you can ignore what's happening around you and get swept up and passed on, or you can lean into the technology. You think about the people who worked out in the cotton fields, and when the cotton gin came around, what a difference that made. And some of those people retooled and went and worked in the textile mills and learned how to run the equipment, and it gave them a whole new career and some exciting things. And then, of course, others didn't really lean in. And so I'm excited about this conversation, and I'm bullish on the idea that we can lean into this moment and it can be a good thing.
Indeed. Yeah. And I think that as we go through this episode, we're going to explore like all the different perspectives on both sides of the spectrum, like those who think that AI is going to destroy creativity as a whole, or folks who are eagerly embracing it and looking for the next thing. Regardless of what side of the conversation you're on, there's no denying that generative AI is just changing the world of creativity, right? It lowers the barrier to entry for doing creative work. If you don't consider yourself a creative, you've got tools available now that you don't need to have the perfect hand for drawing things to produce an image and make the thing that's in your brain come to life. I like to say that it's democratizing creativity to make it so that creative tools are available to more people. But the consequence of that is that it's disrupting entire industries that have been built on things like commodity services and professional services even. I think it's a real world fear that people have that AI is going to take my job as a creative. And I want to dig into all of that. We're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into to what extent that's true, and also explore some ways that creatives might prepare for what's coming.
Well, there's a lot to think about. And in the creative industry, AI is already having an impact. Let's talk about the impact that we're already seeing. I know you've done some research on this. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so we talked about research in our last episode. So if you haven't caught that, go back. But I actually used deep research to do a lot of the research in this piece, and I've verified as much of it as I could. But I was actually really surprised to get some perspective on how AI is already changing things in the industry. So one report said that in US media and entertainment alone, over 203,000 jobs could be significantly disrupted in the next few years by generative AI adoption. We've already seen it starting to take place. One area is things like visual effects, video editing, dubbing are going to be some of the things that are effective as we're looking at tools like 11 Labs that can then dub over content. As we talked about in our filmmaking episode, as a solo creative, I can generate sound effects. I don't need to have a Foley artist to do that. I can generate a VO. I don't need a voiceover artist to do that. It's going to be a real impact, I think, on folks. And then 75% of entertainment business leaders have said that AI tools have already led to job eliminations or consolidations in their companies. That kind of blew my mind.
I completely believe that. I heard an AI influencer the other day, and this is a scary statistic, but they surmised that 60 to 80% of admin jobs by the end of the year could possibly be replaced with agentic AI. Now that might be hyperbolic, I don't know, but I can certainly see how some admin tasks could be eliminated because AI can pick some of those things up. One thing that I think that just keeps stirring in my mind as we're talking about this change that's come is a while back, Disney Plus released a documentary about Industrial Light and Magic, and they talked about what happened when Jurassic Park came around, and they offered everyone in the shop the opportunity to be trained on how to use computer-generated effects or to stay in the optical world. And there are a few people who just refuse. They're like, no, I don't want a computer taking my job animating this puppet or this, whatever the technology was they were using at the time. And a lot of those people are no longer in the industry, but the ones who leaned in are still working in the industry today. We have a choice to make as we think about how we take on this moment in time.
Yeah, as we think about like the actual roles that are at risk here, I feel like so many people saw AI coming and they're like, oh, it's going to be all the blue collar roles are going to be replaced by AI, and the robots are going to be flipping our burgers and the robots are going to be checking us out at the grocery store. But it's been the creative roles that have had the biggest impact. A World Economic Forum report just flagged graphic design as one of the jobs most threatened by automation. in AI. And if you think about it, I can go to Ideogram, I can type in a prompt and I can get a workable graphic that's better than anything I can get on Fiverr. That's going to cause some disruption. Things that can be done with AI, if it's like basic writing, puts writing and photography and illustration, all of these things at risk. One practical example I remember reading about a couple of years ago was BuzzFeed had cut like 12% of their staff and replaced them with people using OpenAI tools. I noticed I said people using OpenAI tools because one of the quotes that gets thrown around in this space a lot is that AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI is going to take your job. And so, man, I think there's some good wisdom there to consider as you're considering your career and where you fit in.
Yeah. I remember way back when DALL-E 2 came out. That's where outpainting first came around. And I remember uploading a picture of Mona Lisa in the center of the frame, and then you draw a little box next to it and you could put in your text prompt. And I asked it to extend the mountains and lake in Da Vinci style. And I played around with it for 45 minutes. And I'll be honest, my mouth dropped open and I started to sweat and my heart started to beat a little bit faster because I'm a graphic artist. And I thought, my gosh, did I just witness my own extinction in this moment? And while I do have some fears that, well, I know there are people who will go to Ideogram rather than hire me to do a logo now. That's the reality. But both you and I work in the church world. And I also feel a little bit of excitement in the idea that someone who can't afford our day rate or our hourly rate for a project still has the opportunity to be creative. So I think there's two sides of the coin on this. I think it will allow some people to bring creative visions that they never could have imagined bringing to life. And then I think there's the impact that it will have on people like you and me. But I don't know what your experience has been, but I'll tell you that my experience has been that it has actually opened up more opportunities for me to do things that I might not otherwise have been done. I find I kind of take 2 steps forward, 2 steps back every time I have this conversation internally because I'm excited about the possibilities and also a little bit scared of what happens next.
Yeah. I came up with a lot of examples of folks who were describing their experience approaching AI as a creative. And I found that a lot of folks have the same experience, but they have differing perspectives on what's happening to them. And I think that a part of what differentiates where you fit is how you approach creativity. If you are the fine artist and you are trained to produce a specific type of art, and that could be the written word, that could be visual, that could be audio, that could be whatever, there's a tendency to lean toward threat. And if you are assembling the pieces to create something broader, there's more optimism and more experience of opportunity. Let's actually look at some vignettes from real world stories of folks who have approached this question and how they've responded. One of the stories that stood out to me, there's these 2 perspectives. One perspective is AI is hurting me as a creative, and the other one is AI is helping me as a creative. And one of the ones that stood out to me from a AI is hurting standpoint is that creatives are losing clients to AI, like you just mentioned. Like a freelance writer wrote that I literally just lost my biggest and best client to ChatGPT today. The client admitted, hey, your writing is better than what AIs can produce, but he said he just can't ignore the profit margin. So he chose to automate to save money. Professional services are expensive. If you're going to hire me, like you said, for my day rate, it's going to cut out a big part of the market. This writer, 10 years of experience, not a novice, said to fellow freelancers, please don't think that you're immune to this. Businesses don't care. They're going to put profits first. So man, like, how does that hit you?
It hurts for sure. I think that we all are going to have to retool a little bit and help people see the value in what the human experience brings to a finished work.
So one other area where I found that creatives are feeling the pain of AI is when they're passionate about the art and they feel like they're forced into using AI instead of their own creativity. An example comes to mind of a 3D game artist was describing how Midjourney came around, and he said that it upended his role overnight because as a game artist, they're creating characters. It would take weeks and weeks of modeling and sculpting and drawing to produce a character for one of these games. But now it's just prompting and then some touch up in Photoshop. He said that I'm not an artist anymore. He says, all I do is prompting. The reason I became a 3D artist in the first place is gone. And he said that his boss pressed for that change because an AI could now spit out the character image in like 2 or 3 days instead of several weeks. And it saved time and saved cost. I feel like I'm being robbed of my artistry is a real thing. How have you experienced that?
I think there's something to that. I remember many years ago when I first started as a graphic designer, working with somebody who was a micromanager, and they wanted to stand over my shoulder and tell me where to put things and let's pick a font now and what color should it be. And I felt like I was a technician rather than an artist. And I kept saying, I'm an artist. I'm not a technician. There's not a lot of excitement for me. This is why my broken record mantra all the time is AI should be a do it with you, not a do it for you. I feel like if I give too much of my agency over to the artificial intelligence, it feels a little soulless. And I totally get that if you have trained to be a 3D artist and now you're just having to prompt things and clean it up in Photoshop, there is a loss of what drives why you do what you do. And I don't know the answer to getting around it yet.
You and I are in a unique position because we're both freelancers. We drive our own creativity. I feel like if you're in that person's role where your management in your organization is dictating it, that's got to be really tough. I can fully empathize with that and realize how good I have it being able to choose my clients and choose how I do my work rather than having that micromanager. That said, though, I mentioned that these experiences are filtered through perspective. There are a lot of stories from creatives who find that AI is helping them. And one of those is where creatives are leveraging AI in that creative process. I think that us as freelancers, we fit into this because we get it intrinsically and we have the freedom to do it. But one illustrator and game artist said that when image models like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion came available, same experience, they eagerly adopted it as part of the creative process because they found that they could produce what they wanted to produce quicker and easier. And if they want to, you kind of go back to that drawing board and do the traditional art, they can, but they don't have to, and they've got other tools available. So 2 perspectives. I feel like you and I, we get to have the privilege of one of those perspectives more than the other. And it's good to think about folks in those other roles that are kind of pigeonholed into using the tools, or they might lose their jobs.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I really do feel for those folks. I mean, for my micromanagement situation, ultimately I left my job, and I can certainly see how this new world that has risen up around us might mean that people need to look elsewhere for creativity, or maybe dabble a little bit more as freelancers or find a way to supplement their work. Rob, as we're thinking about what's happening in the industry, what are industry leaders saying about this moment in time?
You've got the boots on the ground creatives and their experience. It's also interesting to see like those who are in creative leadership, maybe those who are leading studios, see what their perspectives are. Because like at the end of the day, if you kind of take a career arc of a typical creative, you're starting out as the intern, you're doing all the grunt work. That's where you live. But then at some point, like if you have leadership ability, you become a creative director, or you start to lead a studio or things like that. And again, in this, the same as the boots on the ground creatives, industry leaders are having like 2 divergent perspectives too. One group looks at it as a threat and they're raising the alarm, and then the other one sees it as a tool. One common concern is that generative AI is going to just flood the market with cheap formulaic content that undercuts human creatives. And I totally get that. Coming at it from having 25 years of experience in the industry, I can see where this has happened repeatedly throughout the history of the internet. Like SEO was a thing, and next thing you know, you've got article spam just hitting the web, and people are churning out articles that mean nothing, but it's just there to get eyeballs. And that's like really a valid concern.
I really do think that there is a time coming, and we may have to wait a bit for this, where people are going to be tired of artificial things. One of the things I'm seeing a lot when I'm on YouTube these days is people creating these faceless channels where they have a bunch of content that AI has created with an AI voiceover. Even seeing where influencers are taking their photos and creating their digital avatars, and they're no longer appearing on camera. And you can tell that it's AI. It feels soulless. It looks soulless. And I think when the market is flooded with a bunch of copy and paste, press button, get thing content, there's going to be a renaissance, I think, maybe for people like us. I don't know what that means. How do we survive that time in between? But I do think that there is going to be a return to a desire for craftsmanship and boutique style production and all of that. But it may take a little while for people to get to the place where they miss it.
Yeah, like one other thing that comes to mind for me, journalism professor Dan Kennedy, he used to be a news editor. He said that like he's concerned that bottom line obsessed publishers would love to just automate writing wherever they can. He says if they could, they just unleash algorithms to cover everything. They do that too. So he warns writers not to buy into like these rosy promises of AI. For all of its benefits, it could rob current and future writers of those jobs and opportunities. And it's a real thing. Professional artists have kind of had the similar experience. Illustrators watching commissions dry up, clients turning to AI. Person said the existential feeling of dread just feels rampant in the field. It's a real thing. These experiences aren't to be discounted.
We need to start an AI creative support group where we can all sit around and cry on each other's shoulders.
Yeah, you remember that old Mad TV sketch with, oh man, who was it? He was playing professor or a therapist, and the whole point of it was like, hey, I'm having this problem. And he's just like, stop it. And they're like, but I have this problem. It's like, no, stop it. That would be my support strategy. So I think you're going to have to lead that one, Jason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some other industry leader concerns here, things like going back to the 2023 writers and actors strikes, like where the industry was just shut down for a long time. A core part of that was the concern about just unfettered AI use and screenwriters worrying about studios using AI to replace them, turning out scripts, having like digital doubles of actors appearing without consent. One union leader said, without human-driven rules, AI would replace the heart and soul of the creative industry. And so I fully acknowledge that too. Like that's a real concern. And I think it's a question that needs to be had.
Yeah. I have a friend that was a writer for Conan O'Brien for 10 years, has done a bunch of projects, worked on different television shows and so on. And we've had a lot of interesting conversation because I'm such a proponent of AI. And I don't mind how you're using it, but what I know in Hollywood is that if they could replace us all, they would do it in a heartbeat. If AI could write the way that we write, and currently we still have an edge on AI because we know what's funny. I do feel for my friends that are writers, knowing that the bottom line is more important than artistry for those in the higher ups in the industry.
Yeah, there also might be like a false sense of security looking at where AI is today and saying, it's like, no, that can't replace me. Like you tell AI to write a joke and it's like grown. But given a year, and you're going to see that exact same thing of like, okay, it can write something halfway funny. On the other side of the spectrum, though, is the creative leaders that see AI as a tool and they view it with optimism and opportunity. A lot of folks see the role of AI and the contribution of AI being more of a assistant than an outright replacement. And so that's something that we preach on this podcast all the time. And I think if you view it with that perspective, great. But I think it also needs to be filtered through that corporate, we're going to replace everybody and get it done the same, but cheaper approach as well. But one music producer, Nile Rodgers, he said that any tool that allows an artist to create is an amazing thing. And so he hadn't personally used generative AI in the process, but he expected that he will in the future, with the caveat that you're not going to use it to copy someone else's style. Having that sober perspective, I think, is helpful. And then YouTube CEO, also said that AI is a revolution to democratize the creative process, and said that at YouTube, they see that AI shouldn't be a replacement for human creativity. Sounds like something we've said. It should be a tool to enhance creativity. Man, I think we should need to get royalty on that for bringing that up.
We should.
Clearly, he got it from us. I mean, that's all I can say.
Yeah, he must be subscribed. Rob, this is a really great conversation. Let's take a break and come back and finish up our conversation about whether or not AI is coming for our job.
This episode is brought to you by the AI Collaborative. The AI Collaborative is two things. First, it's a community of AI enthusiasts and practitioners learning to apply generative AI together. Second, it's a space where I walk you through everything that I have learned about generative AI after thousands of hours of experimentation. So if you're interested in learning more about using generative AI for creativity, productivity, or personal growth, I hope you'll join me. A new round of applications is opening soon. Learn more at roblauder.com/collaborative.
All right, we are back from the break. And Rob, the question that is on my mind is, how do I stay relevant and competitive as a creative in the age of AI? It's here. How do I keep my edge?
Yeah, so I think a lot of these to you and I are going to be really evident. Or like, duh, you got to do those things. But I think that if you are on the fearful side, these are some things that you can do right away to start to prepare for the future. And even if it doesn't mean that you fully embrace AI, I think that you need to be aware of the tools and you need to be on top of the things. So the first thing I would do, and this is kind of what I've done in my own career as a creative director, is to double down on the unique human element of what I do. And so, like, I've obviously played with all these AI tools. I've created stuff with AI, but at the end of the day, I'm trained as a designer. I'm trained as a videographer and a photographer. I'm trained to produce stuff. I'm going to lean into the things that I can provide that is a unique contribution as a human. So skills and qualities that an AI can't easily replicate. If you are the artist, that could be your personal voice, your style, your creative vision. If you're a writer, for example, that means having a strong brand voice and narrative style that makes your work unmistakably yours. That could be the human connections that you have with clients, that even if they could get something done at a similar quality and cheaper, that you know them in a way that the AI doesn't know them. If you are a visual artist, for example, or a designer, emphasize your unique aesthetic point of view. Remember that like all of the stuff that AI is creating is derivative. And so as you brought up earlier, Jason, like we need ongoing human creativity, and we're going to have a demand for stuff that doesn't all sound the same. And I think that if you kind of lean into that and embrace that and double down on it, rather than going in the other direction of like, let me create the lowest common denominator stuff I can, that's going to set you apart going forward as well.
I would also add, Rob, that what I see a lot of people do is take whatever AI spits out at them and they don't do a lot of alteration to it. So if you just take what the model is giving you, you tend to create stuff that looks like what AI is creating. But when you bring your own unique edge to it, remember, you can add or contribute to the AI's generation to make it something that is uniquely you. And so I find that almost everything that AI spits out at me, I do something to it to make it my own.
Yeah. So I think that's an important concept. It kind of has that analog in like the old SEO industry as well. If you're just spitting stuff out, nobody wants to read that junk. It's not meant for human consumption. It's just meant for a robot. And hey, maybe we're going to have AI reading all of our stuff too and summarizing it. I remember a webcomic that made fun of that point. And it's like, oh, look I just wrote this email with AI. And then on the other end, it's like, oh, hey, look, I just summarized this email with AI. And so eventually you're just going to have two AIs talking to each other and we're going to move on. But by leaning into that human element, you can, I think, set yourself apart. We talked about in our last episode, not becoming overly reliant on AI to where you don't have the human element. I think that's just something to drill into your brain if you haven't already. One copywriter said that editors will still prefer a writer who can nail a publication's tone over one, like an AI that's going to get maybe 50% of the way there. And then they have to just go back and edit it anyway, because that's just going to be more work in the long run. So infuse your heart, your originality into a project. As a creative, lead with only what you can do.
Yeah, good stuff. I think another winning strategy is that we have to learn the tools and then learn how to integrate them smartly together. The reason this podcast is called Fuse is that we're talking about how do we fuse creativity and different tools and all of that, rather than avoid AI altogether. I tell people all the time, the only way to fail at AI right now is to ignore it. Rather than run away from it, pretend like it's not here, learn to use the tools to your advantage. And the real expertise is figuring out how to use the tools together. I did a project just a few weeks ago where I created a physical piece of art from an AI generated piece of art. My church wanted to do a Stations of the Cross thing. I created this image of Jesus using ideogram, got the design I liked, traced it in Illustrator, put it on my Cricut machine, cut it out of watercolor paper, painted it, assembled it, glued it all together, and now it's on a canvas hanging in my church. And it's really the combination of tools and thinking outside the box. You can even do things that are physical with these digitally generated tools. Treat the generative AI that you're working with as a co-pilot or a creative assistant. Think of it as a collaborative partner rather than just push a button, do a thing, as you often say.
In that example you just gave us, you had a creative vision and it was broader than just any one of the tools. I think that that's going to continue to be a valuable skill. And it's not even a skill more as much as it is like a personality trait, seeing a broader vision and your blinders aren't onto a specific thing, right? If the only thing that you know how to use is a hammer, everything else looks like a nail, that principle. I think keeping that broad perspective is important. Another way that you can learn to integrate tools is to just stay up to date on AI features in the software that you already use, because AI is dripping into everything. In some areas, it's just a distraction. It doesn't help. But in some areas, it's really valuable. Things like in Photoshop, their generative fill is incredible. I have gotten so much done that I would never get done before because it's right there in the tool. And sure, I could use an external tool for that, but I don't have to, because I just circle the area and say, put this thing there, and away it goes. Whereas I could have done that in the past. I could have cut out an element and stuck it in there and made sure that the color tones blended and feather my edges and all those other things. Or I can do it in 1/10 of the time with the tools that are available. So keep an eye on those tools. Many creatives are already doing this. An Adobe survey recently, and Adobe, they probably have some skin in the game about how they want to present this, but they say that 90% of creators believe that generative AI can help them by taking care of those menial tasks, sparking new ideas. They're also trying to sell AI services, so keep that in mind. If you're a designer, though, we've talked about this in the past, experiment with AI for rapid prototyping. Like just get a bunch of visual examples, get a mood board going, and refine the best ones with your expertise. If you're a writer, you can use AI in the brainstorming process like we looked at last week, outlining, drafting sections of copy, all that fun stuff, and then you bring your personal touch to that. The key here, though, is to embed AI into your workflow and not let AI just be the workflow. Use it to speed up those repetitive, lower value tasks so that you can focus on spending more time on the creative decisions that actually matter. One tech journalist said it this way. He said that after using AI in his work, the productivity gains, his words, could be absurd. So freeing up more time for that higher level creative thinking. And Jason, I'm sure that you've done some of this in your work too.
Yeah, I think the thing that excites me about using these tools is that I also can make my services available to people who have less money to work with. I do a lot of work in the church world, and I can't always design a logo from the ground up, but I can go to ideogram as a starting point that gets me 60% of the way there and vectorize and do some tweaking and that kind of thing. I like that it not only speeds up workflow, but it also brings the price point down. And in a way, it can make us more profitable on those projects where we can use these tools that will speed things up pretty dramatically.
Yeah, this is outside of the visual creativity area, but I did a project last week where what would normally take me like 3 days took me 3 hours, and I was billing at a project rate. So whether I took 3 days or 12 days or 3 hours, it's based on the outcome. And so I was able to do a lot more in a lot less time and provide the same value to the client. I think one other area where creatives can prepare themselves for what is inevitably coming here is to keep up with AI trends, with the caveat that you can be a trend chaser and you can trace the hype. And so the landscape here is evolving so quickly that you should make it a habit of tracking developments relevant to your field, but to do it strategically. And so a couple of ways that I do this, I have a couple of newsletters that I have as go-tos. One is Superpower Daily. Another one's The Rundown. They're just basically a summary of what's happening in the news that day. And 80% of it might not be relevant to me, but I might pick up a new tool or something here or there. I know you're a big fan of YouTube and you follow some influencers there. What are some of the folks that you follow along with?
My favorite guy to follow is a guy named Matt Wolf. Matt does some really great stuff. He is a generalist, but he does a lot with creativity and image. There's another guy I like a lot called Theoretically Media, Tim Simmons. And he's really more of a video producer, so I like to follow him and his work. There's another guy I follow called Matt Vid Pro, and he does a lot. A lot of times I am sending you information via Messenger. Hey, did you see this thing? And you've usually read about it on Reddit or something, and I found it through YouTube. But I like being able to see the demonstrations of those kind of things. So those people are out there. Another thing that I have done, gosh, I guess I did this 2 months ago maybe, when the task function was added to ChatGPT, is that I have it send me an email at 9 a.m. every morning with the latest developments in AI, particularly in the church. I like to get some church headlines because I'm doing a lot of speaking around that. But you could set up a task that would do some research and find links for you on those topics as well.
Yeah. And also do some of the filtering for you on there. So you don't have to, it can kind of summarize and give you the key details filtered based on what you're interested in. And not to toot our own horn here, Jason, but this is one of the reasons that we started this podcast. There were, as we were concepting this podcast, we're like, there are so many folks out there that are just trying to be first to get the news out there without knowing what they're talking about. Just like, hey, I just want to get the clicks. I need the clicks, let me be the trend chaser. And we don't want to be that. Like, we want to be the ones that, like, I've digested this tool. I understand it. I've used it. I found its strengths and its weaknesses. And then we'll talk about a tool. And so hopefully you'll find, if you're listening, you hopefully find some value in what we're talking about.
Now would be a great time to tell 3 of your friends about us and tell them to subscribe.
Yeah, I got a very nice message earlier today about podcast and just said, hey, love the work that you're doing. So know at least one person is listening, and that makes me feel better. A couple other ways to stay on top of trends. I'm not a big webinar guy, but I do appreciate conferences. Not necessarily for the content of the conference itself. I go less to learn specific skills, but I want to see what people are talking about en masse. So I want to see like what people are talking about from the stage that could clue me off to trends. And then I also want to hear what attendees are talking about and what was said from stage that they interact with, because those are the things that I think culturally lead us in a direction more so than, all right, here's how you do X, Y, or Z task with AI. I want to see what thought leaders are thinking about before they think about it,
Yeah. And just the networking that happens at those things is so helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, but as you do all of this, filter out the hype. Use some of those AI tools that you mentioned, or just avoid the temptation to track down every new thing. You mentioned that you learn about something on a YouTube video, you bring it to me and you say, hey, Rob, have you heard about this? And I'd be like, yeah, I heard about that like 3 days ago, because I am chasing the hype, because I am looking at every Reddit post. But you don't have to do that. You let
every now and then
me do that.
Every now and then I get you with one, though.
Indeed.
I'll get you with one you haven't seen yet. Yeah. I always feel like a huge accomplishment when that happens. I also think, Rob, you and I both set aside a lot of time for R&D. We are experimenting and tinkering and doing things every day. Part of what I appreciate so much about our friendship is that if I can't figure it out, you can help me figure it out, or maybe I can help you figure it out, or whatever. And I think in addition to having R&D time, having someone to bounce off of is really helpful as well. Just having you as a sounding board or helping me think about things in a different way is really helpful as well.
Yeah, I think even in my day job as a creative director here at Summit, I consider part of my role R&D. Like, I literally describe it as R&D, because I feel like if I'm going to be a leader in the creative space, I need to know what tools are coming and how they can be applied and used. And so I try to stay cross-discipline to where I'm jack of all trades, master of few, but then I could connect the dots for my team and say, hey, you're working on social media content this week, or you're working on video clips of repurposing content for social media. Here's a tool that you can use to help you do that thing. And so if you are kind of positioning yourself in the leadership space and you're in a leadership role, you can also use your R&D time to help equip your team to do things as well. The last thing that I would recommend here for creatives as they're looking forward to how to future-proof their role and prepare for what's coming is to strengthen your cross-disciplinary and strategic skills. And so what I mean by that is, like, the more that you can do beyond the purely creative aspect, the more indispensable you're going to become. And so in fields like marketing or design or filmmaking, there's this increasing demand of creatives who can think strategically, do project planning, do creative direction, roles that take that high level decision making that AI can't handle. It's going to be more of those low level creative roles that are going to be hit first. If you develop those skill sets and move yourself up the ladder of abstraction there, you're going to be more indispensable. Like, be the human brain, don't be the machine. If you're like getting gigs on Fiverr for simple logo designs and you're just cranking them out, either one, use AI and do it because everybody else is going to do it anyway, or two, take that step up and be thinking, how can I get out of my commodity role into a more strategic role? One UX designer put it, AI can get words on the page, but a copy strategist looks at the entire content ecosystem and the user journey, and they're asking those important questions that they can then go and guide the AI to produce what's important, but the AI wouldn't be producing on their own without that human insight. The last thing kind of within this section is to diversify your skill set and connect the dots between disciplines. And so, Jason, you brought up earlier, we're looking at individual tools and individual creative disciplines in a broader process of creativity that we can then assemble those things and make something cool that we wouldn't have been able to do before. And so what are some ways like a graphic designer, for example, could use this principle to expand their skill set?
I like what you said earlier about if you only know how to use a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think that we have to expose ourselves to the complete toolbox. And so a lot of people ask me regularly, which AI tool do I need for design? And it's like, you need all of them. You don't need just one of them. They all do different things. Take advantage of those free credits that you get so you can experiment and figure out which tool does which thing, because every job is a little different. That's what I find when I'm working with a graphic artist, is that some things are Illustrator, some things are Photoshop, some things are 3D applications, and there are equivalents in AI for all of those things.
Yeah, I also think that like looking at some tangential skills might be helpful too. If you're a graphic designer, be thinking about like what are the skills or roles that come alongside of that even if you don't learn those disciplines yourself, you can help consult and collaborate with. I'm thinking like UX designers, for example, are a very specific skill set, or a marketing strategist is a very specific skill set that if you as a designer, for example, learn to speak that language, you're going to be far more competitive than if you were just focused on your craft alone. A writer might sharpen their research skills or their interviewing skills because you might be able to write really good, but AI can also write really good. That's poor grammar right there. You might be able to write really well, but an AI model could write even weller. And if you are then training in cross-discipline like research and interviewing skills, then you can create authoritative content that an AI can't do. Deep research, I think, is relevant here. We've brought it up so many times in the past couple episodes because it's so incredibly helpful. Just learning to use the AI tool to do the thing, like I am going to be able to become better equipped to do whatever task I'm doing in that process.
Also combining your technical skills, your creative skills with broader thinking. If you're the best storyteller around, you're a better storyteller than AI. AI is not a very good storyteller. Client communication, being able to be that ambassador to AI. What I found is that I have become the go-to guy for a lot of people in my sphere because they know I know AI and they don't know AI. So I've become the person that they come to for help. And developing your skills and your people skills actually helps you to have longevity and purpose and all of those things.
Yeah, AI has also helped me with my people skills because when I just want to be like, sit down, be quiet, and do the thing, I can run my email through GPT and it can be like, you probably shouldn't say it that way. Here's an alternative way. So it saved me a few times with some client emails. Anyway, let's land this plane, Jason. Undeniably, generative AI is changing the creative world. It's changing creative work and how we work and what we do. It's coming. That train is not going to stop rolling. You aren't Superman. You can't stop it from moving forward. Jobs and workflows are going to have to evolve, including yours, no matter what part of the creative process or where in the org chart you sit. Those routine creative tasks are going to be handled by AI in a lot of cases. Get used to that and be prepared for that. New hybrid roles are being created where you're not just a designer, you're a designer that is going to be using AI tools to accomplish a broader objective. If we learn anything from those stories from the front lines and the industry commentary, we see that there's a clear message for designers, and that's those who adapt, learn, and carve out a human-centered creative niche will find their ways to thrive. Those who resist it, I think you're going to have a bigger challenge coming up. Lastly, stay informed. Keep that human element of creativity at your core and harness AI as a helpful tool. As one analysis framed it that I read earlier, whatever field you're in, transformation's coming, but it's those who partner with the technology, they don't ignore or fear it, who will ride the next wave of creative innovation. And so, Jason, hopefully that's us.
Get your surfboard. It is time to ride this wave. What a great conversation, Rob. I think so many creatives are living in a moment of fear right now, and I hope this gives a little bit of comfort as you think about the coming AI world that we're already living in. I'll just say again that AI should be a do it with you, not a do it for you. If you lean into that and you make yourself valuable to those around you, you have a soul, AI doesn't, and that soul means something when you're being a creative person. Hang in there. AI is not coming for you if you lean in this moment. Join us next time on another episode of Fuse the AI Creative Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to Fuse the AI Creative Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, it would mean a lot to us if you'd smash that subscribe button, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. If you'd like to connect with us or follow along with the projects that we're working on, find us on Instagram at AI Creative Podcast or at AICreativePodcast.com.